After many failed attempts of peaceful protest, set to shed light on major social issues facing our community. We need to view the recent actions at the Trump protest not as criminal, but for what they really are, legitimate political displays of anger due to systemic failure, racism, oppression, bigotry, sexism. I could go on and on. Historically, it wasn't until major upheaval. Can you please stop? It wasn't until major upheaval in almost every.
Your time is up. So next is Dr. Will Cass and Cass.
Keep going. So
Good evening, Council. Albuquerque City Government, which employs APD, is responsible for creating and setting public policy, including policy that guides the police. Public policy necessarily must include public input and consent, remembering that the basic tenet of democracy is consent of the governed. When the term police policy is used instead of public policy, it disconnects both the concept and the process of policy making from the public and relegates it to the world of policing. Effective policing, like democracy, requires the consent of the government. It often seems as though some of the police have lost sight of this reality. Without public trust, confidence, and respect, policing becomes impossible and in turn becomes violent. The reverse sting operation devised by APD, which targets drug addicts and the homeless and misuses police, that is to say public resources, is one example of such a disconnect. I've not read, heard, or seen any but negative comments about it. Yet this practice was defended by APD Chief Eden, with Mayor Berry basically turning a blind eye. It's not clear if Mayor Berry actually agrees with the reverse sting operation concept, but he clearly backed away from criticizing or directing APD's use of it. It is his responsibility as the mayor of Albuquerque to direct APD. If he wants to delegate this responsibility, it should be to public officials or citizens, not to a process controlled wholly by APD. It is city government's responsibility to assure the residents of Albuquerque have an effective police force, one they trust and have confidence in, which necessarily requires the mayor to stay in touch with the level of public trust and confidence in the police. In the case of reverse sting, it seems clear that the public wants the police to try to prevent crime, not provoke it. And the DOJ settlement agreement is clear that being aggressive toward homeless and mentally ill people must stop. We'll do this in two parts.
Next is Ann.
Chief Eden has defended this practice by citing another example where the public has been disconnected from policy that guides the police. The Albuquerque Journal on June 4th, 2016, Chief Eden said that people arrested on felony drug possession charges that are often substance and mental health assistance are offered in jail, and most judges will include mandatory substance abuse treatment as part of the sentencing agreement. This will often be the only reason these subjects will actually participate in treatment options, he said. It seems obvious that substance abuse treatment is better than incarceration, but it's not clear how or by whom this policy was established or how its effectiveness is being measured. What evidence is there that arresting people to compel them to treatment is effective care for the addicted or effective use of police resources? I, for one, think this may actually be more of a misuse of public resources, noting that APD is a public resource as are jails and prisons. But my main concern and my main point is that the policy known as reverse sting seems to have been created entirely within APD and not by, indeed without input from, the public or public officials who should be setting policy which APD in turn should follow and implement. Mayor Berry has access to public input into the making of policy to guide APD in the form of the CPOA and CPCs. Unfortunately, it seems that public input into APD policy has been thwarted. Thank you. Has been thwarted by the lack of support by the mayor and follow-up by the city council for the CPCs, by shutting the CPOA out of policy making, and by treating public policy recommendations as mere suggestions that can be ignored by APD. Mayor Berry can change that. Will you put the public back into public policy making?
Next is Anthony Garcia, followed by Ronnie Lawani, and then Steve Kramer.
We need to keep our rights and get rid of our wrongs. I am Anthony Garcia. I fight for human rights to be enforced worldwide. I am on Facebook. I want all people to use me. There is a war against evil and good since the beginning of time. We just discovered nothing is new under the sun. My American government destroyed my family and killed one daughter through unlawful laws. This is not just happening to me and my family, but to all people, because it is a law, but not law, unlawful laws. Just like the government did Jesus Christ through unlawful laws, where his own people thought Jesus Christ was a criminal and a liar, because government said he's a criminal, and his own people believed when Jesus was a victim of unlawful laws. This is still existing to this day, where families and lives are destroyed through unlawful laws, as law, where now you have no protection and people and families are destroyed through government enforcing unlawful laws. The law is to protect the people, not to destroy and deprive the people. City Council sold our public access TV for $117,000 more a year to destroy public access. Public access is the right to stop and change things through government. Now the building looks abandoned, but still making money. City Council did this to destroy freedom of speech. Took all the people off the show that had crimes on government. Right now, in America, the government is the people's enemy. All people in government are violating human rights and constitutional rights, where lives and families are destroyed and killed from unlawful laws. In 2 minutes, I cannot say everything and explain everything. Because one day, there's going to be a war in America. The people against our government. Now our unlawful laws will no longer protect you. I want the whole world to hear me and use me. Now I understand more than I ever have. It's going to end, bro. The truth will set us free. Nothing lasts forever. And you guys are all doing crimes by enforcing unlawful laws. And it's going to end. More people are fighting. No, we both united, we stand, and we can change it. It's part of the New World Order. We can change it. And if you guys don't care, you guys are going to be accountable for the crimes after the war. Whoever is tried, you will be tried, and you will be hung where you did your crimes. Just like the Russians did to Adolf Hitler.
And then Steve Kramer.
Right.
Good evening. A lot has been said already about what happened after the Trump rally, but I watched 6 different networks for about 14 hours, media coverage, and I was very, very disappointed by a lot of the lies that were told about what happened and didn't happen that evening. What I would like to point out to you that I think is important is it's become really clear that the command staff of our police department are very, very top-heavy police department, and not the men and women of the police are the ones that made mistakes in the organization and planning that caused a lot of confusion, including a Native American elderly man to be trampled by a horse, which then led a lot of people to become angry and react. And also the executive director of El Centro herself, who I saw on video come in between the police and people that were really angry to keep the peace. She was with the other peacemakers who were wearing orange and yellow vests. She herself had to go and hide in a revolving door to save herself from a horse. Now, if she was being pushed away from the convention center, why would she be in that revolving door? There was obviously a lot of confusion. And I don't blame the police for it. They did a really good job, especially in the beginning. But the planning was definitely a problem. there are limits to free speech. If you look at Germany and the calls for Kristallnacht, that is calls for violence, not for free speech.
The last speaker is Steve Kramer.
Thank you.
Build that wall.
Good evening, Council. And first, I would just like to thank you for your gracious welcome of all the commenters and making us feel so welcome. It's always nice to be in a pleasant environment. And then I would also like to apologize for even being here to take up these 2 minutes, because over the past few months, it's pretty obvious that it's obnoxious to you all. And thank you, Trudy, for indulging my vanity, because like that GovTV audience is just something I can't like stay away from trying to get on, and here I am. And anyways, just sorry about that, and sorry about my presence. In fact, I just did want to read a couple of quotes, because there's been some great comments tonight about the night of the protest, and I would like to talk about those, and hopefully there'll be time. But Dan Lewis, you have some strange, quotes coming out the past few weeks about this one, for instance. The violence that we're seeing this evening is absolutely unacceptable and is not the fault of Donald Trump, his campaign, or the attendees at the rally this evening, Lewis said in a statement. And it goes on, these organizations this evening devolved from community action groups to hate groups by every usual measure. This was not a protest, it was a riot that was a result of a mob trying to cause damage and injury to the public property. And then just to juxtapose that to a quote regarding our city attorney here, Ms. Hernandez, the quote, this letter clearly states that there was a misunderstanding. Regardless of who's at fault, there's no point in blaming anyone. What's the point in that? So I'm a little confused at how we can be so quick to blame an entire event on one organization or one individual, and then go on when we have very objective evidence from the Monitor, the meeting in March. I mean, he's really clear about what the problem is, despite the continued apologies for it. I mean, he can't say it much more clear. I just want to add to that despite what people are saying about being in the real-time crime center or whatever, we were on the ground and those horses ran people down, and that's when the crowd flipped out. And I'm happy to debate that with anyone at any time, including right now, since we do that in public comment now.
Thanks, sir. Your time's up. We're going to take our 3-minute break.
Get him out! Get him out of here!
Councilor Pena.
Build the wall! Get him out!
Councilor Pena.
Please. Steve, can you tell me a little bit about, you had explained to me kind of how it worked out in terms of people being cornered and how it could have been better planned. I think, these are some of the conversations that we need to have, because it's not to say that there won't be other, protests in the future. And really when you work together with the police department to kind of plan this ahead of time, can you tell me a little bit about what you think could have happened a little bit better with the pre-planning? Just briefly, though, Steve.
Yes, I'll be as brief as possible, and thank you for the question. I do want to add that, going all the way, sorry, is that better? Going all the way back to like the 330 marching 14, we've been in the street a long time, and I've seen the police sort of evolving through these reforms. And I do want to say, like, by and large, to most of that day, the relationships out there were pretty darn good. And what I noticed, even when the crowd did sort of break that soft barrier that was there on the southwest corner of 2nd into Harvest, so that crowd moved up into the plaza area, and like music was still playing, jokes were still being told, there was still conversation with the police officers themselves. Things were reasonable. They were kind of planning it because it was kind of amping up. And my point that I had tried to make, and I tried to make to you when you were kind enough to hear us out, was that the plan that night was obviously for the officers to move from the west and pushing that crowd to the east. So if you can just imagine where we're at, everybody knows it. There's nowhere to go to the east, and there was nowhere to go to the south. And they were saying, you need to move to the south over the PA system. And what I'm saying is, if you're going to move 100 to 200 people, you really need to know where that back door is for them to get out. And I would hope that the people, in charge of that planning really think about that, because they were kettled and there was nowhere for them to go, and it was going to go bad, and it did. And it's on video. So I just want to add this, and then I'll be quiet. The moment when the energy shifts it's on video, and it's not an opinion, and it's not subject to conjecture or any of this other stuff. It's when they moved the horses in, and the people that weren't physically fit enough to get out of the way fast enough couldn't, and then it really it angered the crowd as it should, and I'm not really sure we should be apologizing for that. I'm sorry.
And Steve, so just to make a quick point, so when we discussed it, you talked that overall the police had done a good job. I just want to make sure that it's not us against them, but it's really about, these things happen in communities, whether we agree or disagree with them, they happen in the community, and if we could work better together to try to alleviate anything in the future. We need to do that as the city, because we have to make sure that we keep people safe. And I think that the people who tried to do this initially tried to ensure that people were safe, but like I said, when we call for something like this, we better be prepared for something, bad to happen. And then I just want to end with saying that, I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say something else, Steve. But, I just really appreciate, having that conversation with you and us really learning from this, because at the end of the day, I think there's a valuable lesson for us all to learn from what happened on that day. So thank you, Steve.
That should never come back to the city.
Thank you.
We'll take a 30-minute break.
Get him out of here, Dan.
We'll look at the environment you placed it in, we didn't do it, we've been living through it. Tell Don it's cool that he left, because it's better that he leaves instead of him dropping his head every time. Oh, I haven't been talking.
I think consistency and equity can go a long way.
Elaine.
I think that we allow public comment to be litigated by former city officials. Yeah, but the rules aren't about me. I'm not debating all that. I'm saying it's public comment. Hey, hang on.
What is your business?
If it's public comment and then it's allowed for the city to debate the speaker, I don't really think that falls into the definition of public comment. I appreciate questions and stuff, but not when it becomes on the verge of litigating what the speaker's saying here, because it's not fair. There's not equity among that, because this is a citizen without that expertise having to answer to someone like that. And that's going to cause people to do stuff. Just the same as when horses are used to run down Native Americans, that's going to elicit a bad response. And I'm not willing to apologize for that. And I wish that none of that had happened. I like a lot of those officers, but it did happen. I don't want to ever see that happen. But I certainly don't want to see Native Americans run down horses. Just think about that. As white men, think about that. Like that's really bad. And it's really bad for them. It's humiliating, it's degrading. And that's when the crowd turned, and I urge you, I'll send you the video in just that minute you need to see. Yeah, they're just not physically fit enough, so the horse comes quick, and he's like going like,
I grew up on a ranch, and I can tell you, those big ass draft horses, they're intimidating. You get one of those fuckers who's 18, 19, and if I'll come at you,
you can lead horse, but you need somebody to do it.
just look at it. And then, oh, I saw it happen, I was there, but when you look at the film,
I know, Chad, man, shut the fuck
okay, Steve. Hey, I'm just, the only thing it's weird. When that film comes, notice there's no damage there until after all that happens. And like I told the other counselor, I'm not here to say like it's that guy's fault. I don't care. And it's certainly not the field guy's fault. But some breakdown happened. Yeah, we have it all. I've drawn diagrams.
You know, like if he wants to sit down with us to talk, like we can show up and break down to him. It started with and even when the barricade was like as part of that action, the cops that were there, they weren't afraid to like shoot themselves or anything like that. They were there and people were like, it was cool. I saw officers sharing their water with the people. Like I gave them like a brand new thing of water.
You accept it too.
That's not my job.
You start with that flag and take it down and honor the flag of the yeah, that's, there ain't no America. Hang on. America where they put four times, they tell the rest of that's a flag of war that belongs on the sea. And the colors are red, white, and blue. Our Dakota people killed Custer. They annihilated his whole entire family. And not only did they annihilate him, they took that. They annihilated his years.
So that's what you
So like that's what they're saying. That's what the people are saying. Not just Albuquerque, not just Albuquerque, but all the Indian residents. And I'm together
To me,
now. The world is listen to say that government is not supposed to be
We're willing to think about myself.
Making sure people stay in the office today, don't stay there by yourself. I mean, the trail this idea. It also helps with redoing our signage.
Okay, so like the two court cases, Kevin versus the United States and John versus the United States, proven that the United States is not a country. You take that back down, take it out of all their offices, and you let go of those who are in jail that went to the Donald Trump rally due to the fact that Albuquerque is also made for
Okay, and the other video, I was like 40 minutes from having it done. And it's really good.
Thank you, the other details, sir. Taking that flag.
I think all of you would have liked to explain the
a blessing to me.
I appreciate you sharing. Just have some more jacket stuff for them.
I felt like we got that the other day.
And if I could,
I wonder where 80 becomes the cloud. Hate cloud.
because here's why, the ones that
Where is 80?
no, I'm not asking.
Comes to hate cloud.
No, you don't give me 2 minutes because I'm a real baby here. I'm not part of your system that just came here on a boat. We were already here.
I get all video.
So someday you guys have to respect that.
Incident.
If you can respect that, the people are going to see it.
This guy, he doesn't even belong to Dakota.
I mean, they must ask for one. No, I don't want applications. Give me 10 minutes.
Just play what everybody thinks. And I'd love to be at home and like.
Why don't we just meet like we met today?
Darlene?
Yeah, I would love to meet with them, but I want to open
No,
the
probably
meeting
not.
right now.
Unless
There's
something.
nothing wrong with it.
I've worked me out, man. Only if there's something that's gotta be said.
Yeah, we're good going around.
Why not?
I know what the you're not welcome sign looks like.
Why, yeah, why is that?
I got it, but they
Okay, let me ask you, let me ask you a question.
It's taken over. But luckily, I draw so I can do it whenever.
Right, okay,
But everybody's thinking.
Good night.
We won't come back for that public access issue.
They're everywhere.
You know, I don't even got no interest of, I have no interest in taking no pictures or filming or nothing in this place. Used to want to give me joy, but there ain't nothing ever gonna happen different in these chambers because of exactly what we see every day. Sit next to the Secretary of State, we got 3 forms of government, you know what I mean? And then they expect us to sit here like stupid people, like idiots, and act like it's us against the police so they can cause, fiction. And it ain't that at all. In fact, we were sharing water, right? And we were sharing some stories. And I helped some Trump people out of the little chaos because they were all confused, not really getting what happened. These people have us here like we're dummies, man, like we're stupid people. And that's what I hate, you know what I mean? I hate being in front of, Trump supporters when they tell me my skin is dirty. It's like a little Indian baby at home. Someday they're gonna call her a dirty little Indian. Yeah, so I ain't taking it.
I
think that there should be no barriers, because that's intimidation.
Sort of
You think we should just let
to come, give public comment, right?
No, not everybody's
To a gentleman that will decide the fate of like your LLC.
Okay, so how come Trump gets
So what should we do?
So it's an interesting question. Yeah. Have a good night.
Protests like this, where you know that, you know, things make it ignited. That's why usually the cops are there and they
Did he bounce out?
just these little barriers that can just be
Yeah,
knocked
she did.
around.
Gee, I'm gonna bounce out. Don't take my stuff. Do you need it?
I'm good now.
All right. Good
Yeah,
night,
I think
everyone.
that Donald Trump, if he could dish it out, he could also take it. Yeah, he says a lot. He says way
I mean,
too.
take
Donald
rocks
Trump,
with rocks
no, Donald Trump
violence
Donald Trump don't understand treaties. He really doesn't. Those treaties are very, very powerful. Matter of fact, Obama understands treaty.
He understands all
Yeah,
of it.
he doesn't understand all of it,
Why
but he
doesn't he take the
understands
American
Pine
flag
Ridge.
down?
He understands Pine Ridge. That's a good
Obama
point.
agrees with everything with you.
I wouldn't say he.
He's been your president for 8 years. Why has he made it?
You've been a president too. Why did you take it down?
Take it down.
Yeah.
But
There's no
would
buts.
Obama
Why didn't
agree?
you take
Would
it?
Obama take that flag?
I'm telling you about it. How you did it.
Obama does speeches next to that flag.
I know he does, and
Why
I do
doesn't he take
speeches
it?
next to
Why
my
doesn't he
flag.
take it?
You know, let me tell you something. I'm gonna tell you right now the real story. I am a real Lakota, and I'm not intimidated by your flag or your speeches or nothing. Okay? I'm the very first person since 1890 to bring out the flag of the Little Bighorn. Okay? I have already been shot, stabbed, molested, and disowned. I've already been
How far away from the Burke community office do you live?
I'm in prison, and I'm gay. There's nothing you
How far
guys
away from,
can
because
do
I've got my
to
bike,
say
I brought my bike down with
that
me from
will
Santa Fe so I can just get from, or the office to wherever you're at.
I don't want to ever intimidate.
Okay, but you're
Like, I'm
trying
sorry
to by
for-
that flag.
I'm sorry for the
Okay.
things that you.
No, my bike's at the Center for Progress and
But those
Justice.
things, in
I know it's gonna give me right back there and I
Indian
can get
country,
to
before white
your
people
place from there.
came, we didn't have them problems. Okay, we didn't have a gold flag.
Shit.
Our people didn't have to fight for their freedom.
8 miles,
They didn't have
okay.
to fight for their rights.
I'm
Maybe they
wondering.
fought over a woman or a man.
Maybe city councilors, and maybe they would take that. I don't know. Agree with you on that.
Hold on.
Change it to democracy, and it's all pretty part of history, a lot, but in your flag, you go prejudice.
I'm seeing if I still don't have time to get back to Santa Fe.
Everything lies democracy, destroy the.
I was gonna try
mob rules.
I'm trying to see if I can, because I know I can get to the downtown transit
And
center.
kill,
It's
and
$4
die.
Okay, perfect example.
It's easier.
Donald Trump is bankrupt 5 times. The city of Albuquerque is bankrupt. And those barriers, everything that comes from this land